imagine like going through life like just collecting a paycheck and never buying any property. Well, in that game of Monopoly, and you're gonna go broke very quick. Like imagine just putting $6,500 in an IRA for 30 years, averaging like 8%. That's gonna put you at about $1.2 million. When people say I want to be a millionaire, it's not really that difficult. So if you're thinking about like football, you have to understand like 78% of them go broke after they stop playing. So if the NFL season is running roughly about 6 months, like that money stops when you stop playing.
If you like to win, you are in the right place today. Welcome to Premier Insight Podcast. My name is Raphael Price, and this episode is custom built for the student and professional athlete. Today's theme is real estate investment strategies for student and professional athletes to help them build robust investment portfolios. We are blessed to spotlight Mr. James Morris Jr., Chicago-based real estate business owner, investor, educator, and economist. Welcome to Premier Insight Podcast, Mr. Morris.
Hey, thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Yes. And so before we really get into the meat of our conversation, I want to learn a little bit more about your background for the viewers so they can understand how you got your start in real estate and who really shaped your paradigm to the business.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family of real estate investors and entrepreneurs, and it was my uncle who introduced me to the life of real estate because he was a young age, 21 years old. He bought his first three flat. He lived on the first floor. My mom lived on the third floor. He had another sister that lived in the basement, and he rented out the second floor. So as me growing up, I always saw him. He worked at UPS, but then I saw him like always doing work and improving the property. And at that young age, I didn't know like what that will like manifest to, but I do remember when he moved out to the suburbs from that home and then leveraging that home and then opening up a car wash and then a restaurant, then a hair salon, then a clothing store. And it was at that point that I understood that one job or one income wasn't going to fund your lifestyle. It was those multiple streams of income, and therefore you're not always dependent on your W-2 income. So that's where I just love the business aspect of it, which traditionally led me to like majoring in economics and begin, studying the markets and mutual funds and stocks and how even like owning a small share of a company, you're still classified as an owner. So you're reaping the benefits. And then it just kind of, I just love like financial literacy from that aspect. So as a young age, you would always, the games were Monopoly, Life, wrapped around money, and, one of the analogies is more of imagine like going through life, like just collecting a paycheck and never buying any property. Well, in that game of Monopoly, and you're gonna go broke very quick, because all you're doing is you're paying rent, you're paying taxes. And then eventually, you may land on go to jail and you're sitting there and you just like observing, like watching everyone else making money. And that was something I never really wanted for myself.
Mm. That's beautiful. And speaking of Monopoly, I just played Monopoly with my daughter last night. I'm not kidding you. She's only 7. A friend of mine gave it to me for Christmas, gave it to my daughter for Christmas. And I said she asked me, Daddy, when are we going to play a game? And so I said, we're going to do it tonight. And I'm so glad that you spoke about that because that's really important. And you've been doing a great job of that as well, passing it on to your children, getting them involved in the game early so that they can be successful as you are.
Mm.
Now, as we begin into the crux of this issue here, for you, there's a connection between sports and finance, and it's very much team oriented. So would you take time to elaborate on that concept to help us understand the similarities between those disciplines? We're talking about sports and finance.
Yeah. So, I have 3 children. Right now we're in basketball season, so I'm coaching them for basketball. And They also play baseball, and another one plays hockey. My daughter plays softball and volleyball. But for me, like if you think of a team, and right now, a team, if you're talking about football, a team has an offense, a defense, and special teams. Well, in order for that team to thoroughly be successful, they have to be clicking on offense, defense, and special teams because you can't have a great offense and then you have a poor defense. So what you score, you giving back up, right? Eventually, your offense isn't going to be able to keep up, because they're constantly on the field and they're getting tired. But what I like to think about this is, sometimes like when we're late into financing, then we're running our 2 minute offense, because you're in your 50s. Now the IRS calls that like catch up contributions. Those are for people who you maybe life kind of controlled and you weren't able to contribute early on, right? So now you're 50 years old and they're allowing you to put in an extra $6,500 to $7,500 a year into your IRA. Well, if the traditional age, based on the Social Security is saying like you should retire at 62, well, the average lifespan is 75. So a lot of us spend our good years working at that establishment. And then we're deferring our satisfaction, our gratification until we 62. I've known some people that go to 67, 72 years old. That's the maximum Social Security. But now you're only giving yourself really 3 years to enjoy your life. But what if your 2 minute offense started as soon as the tip off or the kickoff? And that's when you want to be aggressive with your investing because for the majority of the people, they may not be married, they may not have kids. You have way more energy, so you can work two, three jobs, but it's the compound interest. So if you start investing early, then
Hmm.
that compound interest kind of builds and builds and builds. So when you do hit that 62, you have 30 years in. And the great simplest formula is like imagine just putting $6,500 in an IRA for 30 years,
Hmm.
averaging like 8%. That's going to put you at about $1.2 million. Like, so for me, when I saw it, like when people say, I want to be a millionaire, it's not really that difficult. Even if you had a term life insurance and you just put in, $600 a month,
Hmm.
it really doesn't even cost that much. That's more of like a whole life. But now you're thinking beyond yourself. You're thinking about your family. You're going to leave them a few $1 million. So, and that's not even taking consideration your income. You may have a home, you may have some outside investments. I just saw like a simple path to where how number one, you can start with streams of income, and then those streams income can just start and just kind of manifest and grow exponentially, right?
I appreciate you sharing that about leaving that inheritance for your children. But I just read this. I'm not lying. I just read this morning in Proverbs. It says, "A good man leaves an inheritance for his children." You're a good man, Mr. Morris, because you're doing that. And unfortunately, there are many fathers, especially in our community, that aren't doing that because they haven't been taught to do that. And that's a big part of what you've been doing in your expertise as an educator in the community. We're going to get into that as well a little bit later. But for now, let's tap into this subject about your decades of experience as an investment real estate educator and as a successful real estate business owner. What kind of advice would you give to a professional athlete to enhance his retirement portfolio? And then what kind of advice would you give to a student athlete? Because we understand those two perspectives may be a little bit different. So maybe if you could speak to that for our viewers.
All right, awesome. Great question. So I'll start with the professional athlete. Whether it is NBA, NFL, NHL, and, Major League Baseball, you have to do your research. And that research would be like, what is the average lifespan of an athlete? So if you're thinking about like football, you have to understand like 78% of them go broke after they stop playing. And why is that? So once you understand those reasons, then you can kind of set up a blueprint so that you don't hit those pitfalls. Number one, the money comes in early and fast. And let's just use football. Like, even if you get a $10 million contract, which in order to get that, you have to be top tier, like first round, right? To get that. And a lot of
Right.
it is understanding what's guaranteed money and what's non-guaranteed money. So of that 10 million, 10 million is not guaranteed. Like there may be some incentives tied to your performance play, how many yards or TDs or sacks. But if you get injured, then that $10 million you'll never see.
Mm.
And uh, I'll take it back to what most people don't understand because they're so young, is that the 10 million you will never see, because now
Mm.
that puts you in a higher tax bracket to where 48% of that is going to FICA. Well, FICA is tax, right? And then so now you're down to your 10 million goes down to a little bit about $5 million. But then what
Mm.
they don't explain to you is that there's a job tax. Now, the job taxes, now you're paying taxes in every city that you play in, right?
Mm.
So that is money that you have to pay. Then you have agent fees. So now that 10 million can dwindle down to roughly about $3 million. But the one thing that we see is like our family only hear in the paper, like, oh, we have $10 million. Like, can you buy me a house? Can you buy me a car? But when you're in that lifestyle, you want to look rich because people think you made it. So you may go buy, a half a million or $1 million house. Well, now that 3 million, let's go to 2.5 million. And then you may buy the car, right? And then you want to
Mm.
buy your mom's a house. So now you're down to like really like right under $2 million. But this $2 million has to last you for the year. And the biggest surprise to most is just you don't get a check in your off season. So now you have to learn how to budget that money. So if the NFL season is running roughly about 6 months, like that money stops when you stop playing. Granted, like
Mm.
you may not even make the playoffs or go to the Super Bowl. So now you have to budget. So I would say the
Sure.
pitfall for most people is just you have to understand that the money that's coming in, the same amount can't go out. And that's more for the professional athletes. So I would say the pitfall, depending on where they are in their career, those five biggest pitfalls. Number one may be family. You're putting your family on payroll. Two, it may be children. You're out there birthing a lot of kids, and then we know child support is going to take a large percentage of that money. Divorce. Divorce is like, man, you divvying up your assets. So if you had 2 million, you may be left with
You forget it. You can
right.
blow that away.
You may, and then it's the ego. So it's the ego. So it's the chains, the cars. And the one thing about this is like broke people, you're out there trying to impress a whole bunch of nobodies. So when you broke, you can have some jewelry around your neck, and I'm be like, that's not real. So now you go out to buy the real stuff. But if you have money, like I can wear knockoffs all day, and you're gonna assume it's real because I can afford it. But for me, it's not going to be real. I'm not going to spend my money on foolish things. So I'm happy to see most athletes are coming out and saying, man, my jewelry is not real. Why would I spend all of that money just to impress you? Right? I have the money. And it's the saying like rich is loud and wealth is silent. You move in silence because you don't have to impress anyone. And then that fifth thing is like the game retires you. Like you don't retire from the game. Like you can be cut. It's always some young player that's going to outperform you if you're not investing in your body and in your time and your efforts. An
That's right.
injury can take you out. Like
That's
your
right.
rookie season, you can come in first game and you can be gone same game,
Mhm.
right? And
Yes.
then so now even let's say even if you did have that $2 million, most of them are coming out of college early. That $2 million, that's your earnings. That's not going to last you your entire life. So now you got to go out and get a job, right? And people's like, man, you had that $10 million. Like, no, I never had the $10 million. I had a $10 million contract, but I never
Hmm.
had the $10 million. you know
Hmm.
the student athlete, you have to understand like, hey, sports is just to get you a paid education, a free ride. If you go to the league, awesome. But I've known a lot of great players coming out of high school and had some decent college careers and never got that call to that big stage.
Mm.
And the big stage they did get called to, it was a few 10-day contracts here, playing overseas. And eventually reality hits and it's just like, man, like I'm not really making the money. Like I'm just traveling and I got to get a job right now. But if
Mm,
you do get some money, I like to say like 100%, like 50% supposed to go to your needs, right?
mm-hmm,
If 30% goes to your wants, then
mm-hmm,
your last 20% should be like savings and investing. So you can
mm-hmm.
have a budget, you can have a trick off budget. This is my entertainment budget, this is my travel budget, this is my house budget, this is my car budget, but everything has to flow. You can't say, man, I attributed 150% of my money. Like you running in the red, right? And I think that's where people make that mistake is they see the money and they assume that that money's going to always come in at that level.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. And this is what really fires me up about talking with you about real estate investment, because I believe that this is an area that people have not tapped into enough to account for those contingencies in their careers as professional athletes, right? The injuries, all the unknowns. And so, you know, this is a great segue to the next question, which is from your perspective, where are pro athletes missing out on wins in terms of real estate investment?
You know what? Most of them, the money is coming in, but you're not thinking about you being a business. And most people don't think about themselves being a business. It's like, are you marketable? Like now that I have this money, I'm getting taxed at the highest level. That's the problem with W-2 income. It's taxed at the highest level for where if you have a business, then the business allows you to depreciate your asset, which is going to save you money. It allows you to write off all of your expenses. And for me, being in real estate, like I'll write off my computer, my mic, my cameras, my lighting, my cell phone, my internet. I can have a home office, and now I'm writing off a part of that home office. And not only just that, but the utilities, the gas, the
Mm,
heat, the water, everything that makes the house function, right? My truck in my garage, that gets wrote off. The mileage that I drive to the properties or to events. So 100,000 W-2 may come down to like 70, depending on your tax bracket, 70,000. But $100,000 investment property after you deduct the mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, improvements, I may only get taxed at about 20 some thousand dollars. That doesn't mean I put 20 in my pocket. That just means I wrote off everything, right? So where am I? I'm not at that same tax bracket of 100,000. So you get to keep more money. And not to mention with that real estate is it's cash flowing.
mm,
So although you may write the check for the mortgage, it's the tenants that's actually paying the rent and the bills. And now as that property just kind of keeps growing
mhm,
exponentially over years, it's appreciating. And
mm,
now when you need money, you don't have to go to a bank and fill out a loan application. You can look at that property and just say, it's time for you to pay me back my money that I invested into you. And my motto is like every property should buy another property. But
mm,
if I'm doing it on this level, a person who has $10 million or that $2 million, you can go a bigger project, right? And that's where, even though you're playing the game, we go back to, are you playing Monopoly?
mm. You got me salivating over here. I'm ready to go out and buy some properties today. I'm a licensed realtor, so we're gonna make it happen in 2025. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on the show. So how can someone who is new to real estate, may not have a lot of working capital, but maybe they're a homeowner,
Right.
how can they maximize gains and minimize losses as they break into this practice of buying and holding onto property for profit?
You know what? First thing, education. Like you really have to invest in yourself. You have to be a student of the
Mhm,
game or the business that you're trying to go to. So if you talk about an athlete, And Steph Curry may say he shoots 500 threes per day, right? He's investing in himself to where it just becomes natural to him. There's no fear of taking a shot. He has a high probability and he's prepared for the situation. You may take, 100 shots on your right leg off balance, 100 on the left. What does that do? That's preparing you for the trials and tribulations like during the game. So for real estate, I had mentors, number one. I still constantly take classes. I'm constantly reading books. And then the most important thing was because I deal with contractors, while I took the carpentry, the electrical, the plumbing, the appliance repair, I began to understand the trades to where, although I'm not an inspector, when I walk a property, I need to know what it's going to take to beautify that property and whether
Hmm.
this is a great property. And although I am not an attorney, I need to be able to negotiate like an attorney because the attorney doesn't come in until after you have a contract. And
Hmm.
if you're building your team, although I'm not a realtor, I need to know what makes a good realtor, what makes a
Hmm.
good home inspector, what makes a good attorney, what makes a good property, what makes a good tenant, right? And those are some of the things where people like take for granted. Having money, you have access to money. It's finding the money. So homeowners, number one, you may have equity in your home. Number
Hmm.
two, and this is where the ego comes in. Can you sell your home and can you realistically deal with how people may perceive you as, oh, he had to sell his home, he broke. No, I made a financial decision to sell my home and I'm going to transfer this money that I was paying here and I'm going to buy an investment property and I'm going to live in one of those units and we call that house hacking. So now, yes, I have a smaller space, but I have two or three other units paying my bills for me. And now I live rent free, right? So that $1,500 or $2,000 that I was paying to a house, and a house for me is a liability because a house doesn't make you any money. It just keeps taking. An investment property is an asset. So stop investing in depreciating assets, which would be that house and cars. It's considered an asset because you can sell it, but it depreciates. And look at assets that appreciate, which it could be, stocks, mutual funds, it could be gold, it could be artwork. But I love like investment property because I feel like anyone can do it and everyone is doing it because either you're a renter or you're an owner, you know?
It's beautiful. I love that term house hacking, and I've never heard it put that way before. So thank you for the new concept. But here we are on Christmas Eve 2024, and we're also on the eve of a new federal administration coming into power in January. So there are many in the audience and people I know personally that have maybe some qualms about making any moves like buying a rental property that they can personally hack, right? That they
Mhm.
can live in, they can rent out other units. What would you say to a person like that who is kind of like Humpty Dumpty? They on the wall and they don't want to make a fall.
You know what? Warren Buffett always said, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Being an economist, you see the trends. We have a recession every 10 years.
Mm,
A person that's financial literate makes way more money when the market is a downturn. When uh, you cost average for stocks, you buy low, you sell high. Real estate, you buy low, you sell high. I don't like to sell investment properties, so you buy low, you refinance high, and now you take the capital and then you go buy it something else. Now, you can be afraid to invest in real estate, but I find it strange that you're not afraid to just work for one person who can lay you off at any given time. And you can be dependent on one income. One income is very close to zero income. And if you didn't learn anything from COVID, even some of your highest earners lost their job, right? And people
hmm
were, you talking nurses, doctors, engineers, the economy shut down but real estate still held. And if you balance your portfolio between market tenants and government tenants, government kept on paying. right? So you balance your portfolio like that. And even when I've been through, 3 or 4 recessions, even after 9/11, property value went down, that rent still stayed. And the market is always going to go. If you look at anything like, the 60s or 70s of what a home costs. I remember my uncle bought his property that was in 1974 for 38,000. Those same three flats are going for 500,000 right now. So
Mm,
you have to think about like inflation and what it's
mm,
going to, how it's going to impact your dollar. So with this new
mm,
administration, they're projecting that inflation may go up to 4 to 6%. Well, that
mm.
means that that same $100,000 that you had in the savings account, or the same $100,000 salary, is not the same. It's $4 to $6,000 less. And now compound that over 20, 30 years. That's why 38,074 is not the same 38,000 a day. Is actually $500,000. And that's what people, you have to. So what do we say is like, what are you doing to hedge inflation? You parking your money into a savings account, and ego, again, you like to look at it. Oh, I got $10,000 in a savings account, not understanding that that money is dwindling away to inflation. It's not making you any money. The bank may pay you 0.01%, but they're going to lend the money to me at maybe 6%, to
Mm.
go buy some real estate. And then credit cards are going to lend you the money and going to charge you 29%, So how are you making your money work for you? You working for the
You're
money,
not. You're
but you're
messing your
not from the
credit up.
bank.
That's what you're gonna do.
Yeah. Yep.
And you see, for the viewers, we are talking to an economist here, so he knows exactly what the deal is behind the curtain. Okay, so you need to listen and take notes and pay attention because Mr. Morris, okay, he's an expert and he knows exactly how the game is played. So, would you share one secret that has boosted your investment portfolio over the last 20 years?
You know what? Relationships. Real estate is a contact sport. And oftentimes you may want to invest in real estate, but you don't let it be known. Like you kind of moving in silence. Like I don't want to tell anyone that I'm looking for a property. But I would say this. My family knew that when I graduated from college, I was looking for investment property. It was my cousin who was driving down this block in Chicago, taking her child to a daycare center. Right. My property was on 85th Street. She was going to 87th Street, and she saw a sign that said for sale by owner, and she gave me that number, and I contacted that owner, and that was how I got my first 4 unit. And as you
Mm,
know, for sale by owners back then, this was in 2002, they're not on the market. The MLS doesn't see it, realtors don't see it. Now you have
mhm,
for sale by owner websites. But if my cousin did not know that I wanted to buy an investment property, I would have never found that one property, right? Now that one property that I got for 180,000, it was a lady, her husband had passed and she was selling it, and she said, "Here, I'll sell it to you 180 as is, or I'll sell it to you for 192,000 and I'll put in a little work." And I was just like, "Oh no, I'll take it at the 180 and I'll do the
mm,
work."
mhm,
So I got it at 180. I did get like a first time home buyer's grant. It was at that time it was only $3,000, but I only had to put 5% down. That was $9,000, $189,000. 3 units were rented. One was vacant. She had the rents low. It was bringing in $1,400 a month. All right, fast forward to 6 months later. I went to the bank and I wanted to get a home equity loan. 6 months, that property appreciated $61,000, right? $61,000. I choose that money. I start building out a basement unit for myself. So now that 4 units had went to 5 units. I made some improvements. I went back to
mm,
that bank and said, "Hey, like how much is it worth now?" Oh, they said it's worth $100,000 more. It's like, oh, okay, $100,000 more. Hey, let me take that money. And I took that money and I bought a 10 unit. So that one property bought another property, and I bought that 10 unit in 2004. So in 2 years, That property
Mm-hmm.
made 100,000. That in 2 years, that property appreciated more than what I was making on my job.
Mm-hmm.
So then I began thinking about it like, what if you buy a property every 2 years? And then I began thinking like that, even that's not aggressive. What if I bought a property every year? And then I was just like, what if I just kept buying properties? Why would you wait for a job to boost your income 100,000 when you can find a property that can go up 100,000? That one property for 180,000, because I just well, not just. I think it was a couple of years ago, I refinanced it and I got an appraisal. And at the time, I think that property was like 455. Today,
Mm-hmm.
that property is probably worth a little, if I wanted to sell it, I probably could sell it for close to 550, you know. And that's not even taking in like the tax write-offs. It cash flows, I think about 5,500, a month.
Mm-hmm.
So the tenants are paying the bill. So think about, let's just use the average and let's just say 1,400. I kept the rents at $1,400. That was 3 units with one vacancy. For that was 2002. For 22 years, and you just do the math, right? And that's how you got to begin thinking about it. You just say 14 by 12, a little bit about 16,000, and then you multiply that by like 24 years, and you're at 370,000. What the property paid for itself if I never raised the rents, but I did raise the rents. So now imagine the numbers.
I know you did because you're a smart businessman.
And that's what I want people. So like, you afraid to make $300,000? Like I just showed you a worst case scenario. If I never raised the rents, if I never tapped the equity,
Mm.
you know?
Yes, yes, yes. You know, I can't end this show without asking you if you have a book that you would recommend to our audience to read. Do you have a favorite book, or do you have a book that anybody should read if they are just breaking into this game of investing in real estate?
Yeah, you know what? So I do have favorite books. And one of my friends, Jamal King, wrote 9 to 5 Millionaire.
Hmm.
So I'll be remiss if I didn't mention that book. Robert G. Allen wrote Multiple Streams of Income. That's an awesome book. But for me, there are a lot of authors out there. Like I have a whole list. Like some of my books are right behind me. My favorite go-to books that I may reference those often. But you're gonna read a lot of books, and you have to see where you are. Uh, if you're a landlord, you can read How to Become Your First Landlord. So even on my website, I have a free ebook that I put out there for people. Just kind of get started. Then I
Hmm.
authored, you know, A Trip to the Building, which is a children's book, and it's teaching at a young age about real estate, how to make repairs, and then
Hmm.
uh, featured a book for my daughter, Carrington Builds a Budget, for those that need to understand like what is a budget at a young age, and then an activity book that it serves as a connection piece of teaching you about money, debit, credit, real estate, assets, and it's a great activity book for children. But I can use that book when I go into schools talking to some of the high schoolers because they weren't taught financial literacy, right? They don't understand what is compound interest, what is inflation, what are taxes and what state, what's federal taxes, what are the difference in taxes and the tax brackets, and what is leverage? Like, what does that mean? What is equity? And then the last thing is, what does it cost to be you? Like today,
Hmm.
like how much does it cost to be you, to live your current lifestyle? And what type of
Hmm.
lifestyle do you want to live in the future? And what does that look like? And what does that cost? So now
Hmm.
you can reverse engineer to like, oh, I want to live in a big house. I want to drive this luxury car. It looks like that's going to cost me about 7 grand a month. Well, you got to be able
Hmm.
to make more than 7 grand a month right now. That's $84,000 a year. And I said that
Hmm.
84,000 today is not going to be 84,000 20 years. right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is that was my thing. It's like constantly continue to learn. Competence brings confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then income is made to purchase assets, and assets will pay for your liabilities.
Well said. And that's a great way to end this show. I'm so proud of you, Mr. Morris, not only for what you've accomplished in your personal life as a businessman and as a family man, but the service that you're doing to lift others out of the community. And I believe I said this to you when we spoke before, but I believe that you are a modern day Moses
Oh man,
that God is using to lead his children out of financial bondage and to a land overflowing with the blessings of financial freedom and liberty, which comes from wisdom and knowledge and competence, as you as so eloquently have stated. You see, so with that, I want to thank you again for sharing your premier real estate investment advice with our viewers, Mr. Morris.
appreciate
The
it.
work, yes, sir. The work that you've been doing past few decades is invaluable and noteworthy. Thank you for tuning in to Premier Insight Podcast, where we deliver inspiring content for anyone pursuing excellence in life. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive updates related to upcoming guests of renown. I'm Raphael Price, and I pray God's richest blessings upon you in this life and in the one to come. See you all next time.